Good morning, Year 13, and welcome to my humble abode, otherwise known as my COVID nest. So I'm not allowed back in school this entire week because of quarantine. It's probably just as well because I'm still feeling a little bunged up and not sure how contagious I am. So the plan for the week is pretty straightforward. Today I'm going to start off going through some of the new topic. I want you guys to listen to this video for a few minutes, and then I've provided a bunch of information on OneNote for you guys to look through and an activity to do for today. Later in the week we'll take the topic a little bit further, and then next week on the Monday, as it is the last double and we need the double to do it, we are going to watch the Before the Flood documentary that we've been going about for months, because it will actually cover a vast quantity of this entire topic in one great big foul swoop, and it's just good. And on the Thursday we'll carry on a little bit further and make another dent into the topic. IA's a bit tricky this week because there's no point in starting to grow plants in the lab when we're about to go away for 2 weeks at Christmas. We're just going to have to accept that COVID and other things have messed it up a little bit. If you are working on an IA that can be done independently outside of school, then be flying through it and get that done as fast as possible. Collect that data and then tell me where we are. The two people that are still needing to do some stuff in school, I think we're just going to have to wait. We're just going to have to wait till after Christmas. So we're going to be delayed. It is what it is. Okay, let's start this topic then. So topic 7 is all to do with climate change and energy, essentially. Energy production and use and so on, and choices. A lot of this topic is stuff that you'll have done in bits throughout the other topics. So even, for example, climate change, we've talked about the greenhouse effect literally just recently. So some of this stuff I'm not going to spend too much time on. Other bits are very new from what I can tell, and we haven't really talked about before, and I don't know what you did last year, so I'm not going to take the risk, and we'll just go through it anyway. Alright, so we need to talk about energy choices and energy security. That's the first section of the topic. Then climate change causes, which is something I think to some degree we all know, but we'll go over it and make sure we have the detail. And then climate change mitigation and adaptations is the last part. So what are we doing to deal with it? I think one thing just to point out really quickly is that this is a topic that is probably the fastest changing topic in biology. Forget ESS, just in general. Answers that we would have put on a test a few years ago are invalid now because things have changed so quickly. So we'll talk about that a little bit as time goes on, and when certain things come up, certain sort of questions that might come up that you would have answered a certain way even just 4 years ago, you won't answer that way anymore because the times have changed, and I'll highlight that perhaps as we get to them. Okay, the first thing to talk about is just the growth in demand of energy. So energy demand globally has been increasing at a fairly high rate, and in the future it's predicted to still increase, and to increase actually with some predictions in a big way, up to 80% more than we have energy consumption right now in the next sort of 40 years or so. And that's a little bit terrifying in some ways, right? Because we've got over 7 billion people on the planet right now, a lot of those people with access to electricity, and a lot of that electricity coming from fossil fuels, and we need to up that by almost 100%. That's quite scary. The majority of that growth in energy demand is coming from developing countries, so essentially China and India. In India, for example, even though there are almost 1 billion people with electricity, and there are some huge cities and big infrastructure, India still has hundreds of millions of people. I don't know the exact number, but it's 400, 500, 600 million people without access to electricity. In other words, not plugged into a grid. A lot of these people currently still get their energy from burning things. So imagine if we now connected and gave full access to electricity to another 500 million people. That's double the US population almost. That's 2 more Americas taking up energy. That in of itself explains the demand increase. That's not even including China, who are trying to connect all of its rural population to a grid, the energy consumption is going to go up. The question is, where is that energy going to come from? Is it going to come from fossil fuels, or is it going to come from elsewhere? Now, hopefully, the obvious answer, especially after the big COP26 conference 2 weeks ago, is no, it's not going to come from fossil fuels, at least not primarily. And that's kind of what we need to look at now, is where is it coming from and why is it going to come from these different places? One of the big two things that's happened recently is CO2 emissions from energy consumption have decoupled from economic growth in countries. In other words, places like the USA, we used to see as the economy grew, so did the amount of CO2 get released, because more industry, more production, and so on. But for a variety of reasons, two of which being a transition to renewable energy and just better, efficient use of energy in production and various economic activities, that is no longer the case. The USA is actually a bad example, but a lot of European countries have clearly shown this distinction between the two. And it's expected that all developed nations will decouple these two different factors, especially after COP26 just happened, and we're going to start to move away from coal. Coal has been the primary and by far most polluting fossil fuel used over the last century. And the global agreement now, everywhere in the world, is that coal is done. Coal is going to be phased out at a very fast rate over the next couple of decades. So that is going to have a significant impact on our emissions. Just a side note, when we're talking about different forms of energy, nuclear energy should be considered non-renewable. Right? It requires enriched uranium, which is not a renewable source, and it has significant wastes that come from it. It is, however, a low carbon emission form of non-renewable energy. All right, let's move on. So what I'd like you to do today is have a look at the slides that I've included on the OneNote, have a go at the question on the third slide, and then whether it's on Padlet or just in your own notes, make a table and have a look at the named energy production forms that I have on the slide and try to find out as many advantages and disadvantages to them. Now, that sounds like a quick task, but I actually need you to find a bit of detail in your answers for this. So fill that out as fully as you can in your own notes. All right, let's make a start. I'll see you guys next time.